Okay, hi everyone. I'm Jacqueline Diaz Nieto. I'm the Wastewater Network Strategy Lead, and I'm just going to cover a few slides outlining Yorkshire Water's sort of experience with the SSG, the Sewerage Sector Guidance, in the last 18 months. So I've been involved in a former role at Yorkshire Water as a technical specialist, very much with the SUDS business readiness activity for the 1st of April 2020. And the next few slides are just really some of the themes coming out of that work. So I'm going to start with a couple of terminology and acronyms because even sort of amongst our own colleagues, there's still a lot of references to SFA, Sewers for Adoption, and the new terminology is beginning to be bandied about, but just to make sure that we're all on sort of level playing fields and using the same terminology. So the codes for adoption, in my view, covers water asset adoption, so the clean water distribution side, and the sewerage asset adoption. And then you begin to narrow in with the sewerage sector guidance into the sewerage adoption side. And the DCG, which is another key document, which really is the one that replaced Sewers for Adoption, is the design and construction guidance, and it's a part of the sewerage sector guidance, as it's shown here in this slide. So the sewerage sector guidance is a big piece of work. It's freely available on the Water UK website. I'm sure if you type in sewerage sector guidance into Google and Water UK, you'll get to the website. So this SSG covers the procedures, which covers all the service level agreements and the various responsibilities between the developer and the water companies. And the DCG is the replacement for Sewers for Adoption, and it's really the design guidance and standards and specifications that we expect in the designs that are going to be presented for adoption. There's also a section on the information that the developers are expected to provide to the water company at various stages during the process. And then it also includes like standard legal agreements with details of the easements required, etc. So the sewerage sector guidance is the whole package. And then I suppose in my previous role, a lot of my work focused on interpreting the DCG and how we were going to apply that as in the technical acceptance stages of adoption. So the DCG, as I've said previously, is the replacement for Sewers for Adoption. And just to make the point that SUDs are now covered in the codes for adoption in this part C. So sometimes people refer to it as Appendix C because the DCG is Appendix C of the sewerage sector guidance. And just to note really that Yorkshire Water has been adopting basins which weren't in Sewers for Adoption, but we have been adopting them since AMP3, Asset Management Plan 3, but we had our own sort of design standards known as asset standards at the time. But now we've moved to fully work into the DCG because basins are now covered in the DCG. So one of the main changes for our colleagues, I think, and for many, when we had our developer day before the codes for adoption went live, we also heard sort of similar thoughts from developers, is that whereas previously you had your Sewers for Adoption, well used copy of Sewers for Adoption, all the pages earmarked, and you had one fairly short document to work to with designs. This has now sort of grown in length with the SUDS manual. So the DCG, the Sewerage Sector Guidance, references the SUDS manual quite heavily. There's lots of cross-referencing of refer to this chapter, refer to this section. And the SUDS manual is a big, hefty design manual. So now, that's going to be your dogged copy of your design Bible, really. So that in itself has been a significant change. So what's our approach to SUDS adoption? It's summarised on our website, but we're embracing the codes for adoption and the fact that they now include SUDS to be adopted as sewers for various reasons outlined in the 4 bullet points here. They sort of tick a lot of points in our strategies and policies in terms of managing surface water sustainably, creating resilience to climate change, increasing biodiversity net gain, and contributing to net zero carbon. So there's lots of reasons why Yorkshire Water are very much embracing SUDS adoption. So we have produced a guide that we've published on the website now. So if you go to the Yorkshire Water Developer Services web pages and you navigate to the sewerage adoption, it should eventually take you to our design guidance, which isn't a rewriting of the codes for adoption or the SUDS manual. It's merely picking out some of the salient points that we're looking for in the designs precisely to meet those strategies that I described in the previous slide. So, you know, I call it a guide to the industry guides. It sort of points out what sections in the industry guide we're really looking for in the designs. And it's if we've got any nuances on any of the points in terms of maybe signage, and fences is a good one, then we've sort of highlighted those in this little guide, which isn't too onerous to sort of get hands on. It's only, I think it's less than 20 pages, and it points you to what you need to know when in the SUDS manual and the DCG, and that's now available on our website, so you should be able to navigate to that. So personally, in my opinion, I think some of the main changes introduced by the codes for adoption, and that we're still sort of getting used to, really, is the fact that SUDS are adoptable as sewers. So we can now adopt SUDS precisely because the codes for adoption have meant that the definition of a sewer can be applied to SUDS. That's an obvious sort of big change. And the other one is the connection hierarchy. I think within our industry, we've been very much used to looking for assets that are watertight, that keep all the water in the asset and don't leak. And now, of course, with the connection hierarchy, infiltration to ground, which traditionally in sewer design would be called sort of exfiltration. You know, we're looking for assets, SUDS assets, that will infiltrate to ground and let the water out into the grounds. And I think that's quite a big concept to get our heads around, I think, and the impacts that infiltration can have on the surrounding ground and structures, and how we give ourselves assurance that that's been duly considered in the design. So what are the new assets that we're now adopting as sewers that are SUDS? They're the ones, these are the sections in the Appendix C, the DCG. The ones outlined in red are the ones that, you know, they're the sort of new assets that we're getting our heads around in terms of we can now adopt these. Just got a note in there in terms of it's, you know, we sort of really encourage colleagues and developers and designers to start using this terminology. The amount of time, we have had a few applications now where, you know, they're proposing a basin for adoption, but the term basin and pond is used interchangeably. And whereas we have sort of different design standards for, or design guidance for ponds and basins. And so it's really sort of important, I suppose, to use the correct terminology. And also stuff like bioretention systems can be called a number of things like planters and bioretention swales. And I just think it'd be really useful if we start getting used to using the terminology in the DCG, so that we're clear on exactly what assets are being designed and adopted as what type of asset. Oh, and drills as well. This slide here, it's the penultimate slide. It's really just to take the opportunity to make the point that we are using SUDS in our capital solutions as well, and looking to deliver our own SUDS that are classified as sewers, and how the processes from the codes for adoption are sort of being applied in the capital delivery route. And the other point is to sort of highlight this stage 1B, which is the pre-design strategic discussion, you know, which is, I see it as kind of an analogous, as an analogy to sort of the feasibility studies that you'd have when constructing a scheme. So that's an optional stage in the sewerage sector guidance, and sadly at the moment we don't have a big uptake of that stage that's offered, where the developers and designers can speak to the water company in advance of the Section 104 application and agree design principles, and just get a feeler for what we're looking for in terms of accepting those designs. But unfortunately, what tends to happen is we go through the stage 1A pre-planning, and then we don't hear back many times until stage 3, when the Section 104, sorry, stage 2, when the Section 104 application is submitted and this design has been fully a detailed design, and it's very difficult at that stage to then sort of revisit the designs if they're not quite as required or expected. So some of the emerging themes that I was hoping to discuss and get your views on and share some experiences. The use of SUDS for surface water sewerage system design is still low, I would say. So I got some numbers from my colleagues in developer services. Out of the last 140 Section 104 applications that we've had, just I think it was just 6 or 7 have had a SUDS in them. So that's still very low. The uptake of the stage 1B pre-design discussion, as I mentioned, we haven't had many of those since the codes went live, and we're working really hard to encourage developers to come and speak to us early on. Early engagement with landscape architects. So I just wanted to bring up a term that I heard from Sue Illman actually about the civil partnership, which I think is really important. It's about engaging landscape architects early on in the design, and it's a civil partnership between civil engineers and drainage engineers with landscape engineers, landscape designers. And the skill set required for technical assessment has sort of incremented, by several factors. As you've seen, the SUDS manual, it's a big document to get stuck into the detail for each of the different new assets, and we're finding, the skill sets required, and also with the vegetation management and making an assessment on whether we want to provide technical acceptance requires an increased skill set. End of pipe storage solutions, all of the applications that we've had to date, they still are end of pipe storage solutions. Even the SUDS ones, they'll usually have a basin at the end of the pipe. And responsibilities for the asset register for flood risk infrastructure. So the way that we record some of the SUDS assets proposed for adoption, and also the private SUDS assets. So we get quite a few applications coming through where part of the SUDS management train or even the basin at the end of the pipe solution isn't proposed for adoption to Yorkshire Water, and therefore questions about exploring themes around where the single register for SUDS assets and flood risk infrastructure assets is to be held. That's it. So I'm open to any questions that anyone's got around these themes or anything else that you'd like to explore. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. And good sort of insight there into obviously what's happening with Yorkshire Water. We got sort of one question in from Oliver from Sheffield City Council, who asks, does Yorkshire Water have a good, clear and concise strategy for developers that could be shared with lead local flood authorities to help smooth the planning process, especially in relation to pre-planning applications and in the ongoing evolution of SUDS as well?
Okay, thank you for the question. As I sort of covered off in the slides, we have now published the SUDS design guidance that will hopefully provide some steer in terms of the new development assets and what we're looking for in terms of those designs. In terms of the strategic planning side, we're obviously working through our drainage and wastewater management plans as we speak, and I believe there'll be some consultation with the lead local flood authorities in our area and partners in our area regarding that strategic planning exercise. And yeah, feel free to get in contact with myself or anyone else at Yorkshire Water that you've already got links with, if you want to explore the topic more.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Jacqueline, for sharing everything today and for your presentation. And as you say, you're open to people approaching you if they have further questions or things they want to discuss. But otherwise, I'll say thank you again for sharing things as part of the Future Water this year, and yes, see you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure.